Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests. My name is Kristy Bloomfield. I am a Central Aranda, Eastern Aranda, a Yawara woman from Mparntwe, Alice Springs. Firstly, I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners, the Larrakia people, the owners of Darwin, the land we are meeting on today. Also acknowledge our elders, past and present, and our emerging leaders. Welcome to our session today, which will give you an insight into our language and law from our perspective in Central Australia, which includes the Barkly. In Central Australia and the Barkly, we are rich in our culture, language, knowledge and history. When people visit Mparntwe, Alice Springs, they see our vast country where the famous artist Albert Namatjira painted for the world to see. There is much to celebrate about our strength and resilience from our Aboriginal culture in Central Australia, where a sense of kinship and strong leadership does much to provide support and guidance to the local Aboriginal population. Nevertheless, the experience of Aboriginal people in Central Australia and the Barkly has been one of dispossession, and Aboriginal people still experience discrimination, low literacy and numeracy, as English is their third or fourth language, high unemployment, homelessness and overcrowding housing, poor standards in existing housing, difficulties in accessing medical services and poor health standards as a consequence of high chronic diseases, and the highest rates in overrepresentation in out-of-home care, youth justice system and the prisons for Aboriginal people. With core values and cultural respect, empowerment, participation and cultural knowledge and understanding, we as Aboriginal leaders in our own right strive to advocate for and assist Aboriginal people to rise above the many and varied challenges experienced by us on a daily basis, thereby promoting our vision for justice, dignity and equal rights and treatment before the law for Aboriginal people. Please help me in welcoming my panel this morning. Mrs. Rosalie Kunoth-Monks, OAM, is an Aranda and Mudjara woman from the Northern Territory. Born on Utopia Station, Annie Rosalie moved to Alice Springs. At 16, she played the lead role in the film Jeddah. The film was the first to feature an Aboriginal person in the lead role. After 20 years in Melbourne, Annie Rosalie settled back in Alice Springs and started a career of over 50 years in human rights and politics. Alongside her, Dr. Patricia Miller, AO, was born in Alice Springs and grew up on a cattle station in the early years of her life. Annie Pat is a member of the well-known Little Family, which has both traditional and pioneer ties in Central Australia. Over her life, she has made an instrumental contribution to the legal system for over 35 years and the health and education system in Central Australia and throughout the Northern Territory. Dr. Miller was appointed the Deputy Administrator of the Northern Territory in 2002. As the Deputy Administrator, she carries out a range of duties. I'll begin the session with asking Annie Rosalie our first question. Annie Rosalie, can you please give us your perspective on the importance of two-way learning in our language and law in Central Australia?
Before I do, Kristy, I mola de la lichika, Larrakia in Yinamuk. Arunda Langanangama, I mana Kurla Nandra Yanijik. I would like to acknowledge the Larrakia traditional owners, and I say it in my language, which is still alive and well in Central Australia. For without that language, I am nothing, nor do I belong anywhere. My perspective is that the dominant culture of Australia is English. And as we watched the play this morning, it is destructive. Mr. English, you must tone down a bit. I don't want to be talking your language. I want to be able to speak my language, and I do, because I live with my people on the community. But in retaining our language, it not only holds you to your country and also makes sure that this language does not die, not mine. The Arundara Illawarra must keep on going. So it is my duty to make sure I pass it on to my grandchildren, as a Ngala will, my daughter, to her grandchildren, following the protocols that has been set down for hundreds of years in this country. So we must not pretend and keep on getting up and speaking in the most perfect English. Mr. English, you've got to come halfway and meet us. So in that, I say, Kristy, that the safety and security of who we are enables us to make sure the continuity of the first people of this nation is alive, well, and healthy. Yeah. Does that answer?
Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Annie Rosalie. And for you, Annie Pat, from your experience working within the legal system for over 35 years, how have you seen our language and law interact with the legal system?
Thank you, Kristy. First of all, I'd like to acknowledge the Larrakia traditional owners of this country in which we're meeting. I too come from Mparntwe country, Arundara country, and it's really good to see the Larrakia people being recognised whenever the speakers are about to speak. If you're talking about, what's that question?
How has we interacted with the language and law interacted?
Well, at a very early age, my mum was a traditional lady from country northeast of Alice Springs, a Yawara person, and English was her fourth language. So as a 8 to 10-year-old, I used to take her to the shops, do her shopping for her, write the notes out and interpret what she wanted to buy from the shop. She would never go shopping by herself because of this barrier, being able to communicate with the shopkeepers. So I learnt at a very early age how important it was for people who don't speak English as first language to be able to be listened to and understood. The interpreter service exists today, but it didn't exist in the early years of people being arrested and taken into the court system. When I was a teenager, I worked for a couple of Rotarians and used to walk down and collect the mail every morning. And I'd have to go past the old courthouse. And on Monday mornings, there'd probably be between 15 and 20 men who were arrested over the weekend, lined up to go in, and they'd sing out to me, "Pat, go and get your father." And I'd say, "No, I'm on a time limit," but I'd pretend I didn't know them, because they were all people that were arrested on the weekend, and they said, "Otherwise we'll get 14 days. So it was a given thing that if you were arrested on the weekend, the judge would just say, "You got 14 days. So it was mandatory 14 days, whether he liked you or not. So these were the sorts of things that we actually witnessed and seen in those early years. So interpretation of the law to Aboriginal people is really important, especially when you grow up and see the injustices on a daily basis. And we've all witnessed that in our lives. And today we can actually look ahead and see how many wonderful people there are in the legal system that want to make change and change for the better.
Thank you. And I remember you telling me a story about, the high-class lawyer. Are you able to share that with everyone?
Well, there are many high-class lawyers, and I'm lucky enough to have met a lot of them. But on this particular day, down at Carlos, there's about 4 or 5 lawyers standing around in the courtyard and having a break. And anyhow, the client service officer comes out and says, "Oh, there's a client at the front that wants to see the high-class lawyer." And so I'm standing, I just happened to be walking by and I heard this conversation. And so they all puffed out their chest, oh, it must be me. It must be, I must be the one that they want to see. And I said, no. And they were all about like 6'2" or whatever. And there was this lawyer that was about 5'3". And I said, no, he wants to see Paul. Oh. And he's got these glasses on. And I said, they want to see the eyeglass lawyer. Not the high glass.
Good one,
And the other lawyers burst out laughing. Really, I said, yeah, he's trying to tell you that the man with the eyeglasses, that's what he wants. He's not saying high class.
Thank you. And Rosalie, can you give us an example where we used our culture in the criminal courts in Alice Springs?
Yes, I certainly can. Once only. There was a lady killed at my home community, at Utopia. And, of course, we knew this person would be going in to jail for a long time, and if it was going to come out or if we did not know. But I went in, I was the interpreter then, and I asked if they could put me and cross-examine me so I can answer in English. And I wanted that person actually to be released to face what we loosely call sorry business. It's not a sorry business, it's a cleansing exercise, a cleansing issue. But even us Aboriginal people get a bit lazy and call it, whatever we want to really. So only once I succeeded. I got this gentleman out and we went up to Tea Tree where he faced the cultural cleansing and, if possible, forgiveness before he went into jail to rot for a long time. So psychologically, this person needed that. He needed the atonement and forgiveness, like in Catholicism, of the sin that he had committed. It's not only white people who have those sensitivities, so do we. And because our rituals have been hampered by the interaction, we have to find a way of making sure that when our people go into jail, that they don't go insane, that they feel cleansed, that they feel forgiveness before they go in there. So just once, when I was interpreting with Legal Aid as well, I think I was the chair of Legal Aid then, we got this person out. My brother drove him, and I went there as a senior person in the tribal sense, not in the white man's sense. And I asked our people, yes, you may hit him, but do not maim him. And it reminded me of Banjo Patterson. You can poke him easy, but don't maim him or anything. In that hollow log, if you know your Banjo Patterson, it reminded me of that. But nevertheless, we did that exercise. I see not much of that is being done to bring Aboriginal people their feeling of remorse, their feeling of forgiveness of sin. None of that's happening, and it's not right. And I think Nadia needs to have a look at that. I'm sorry to be preaching, Nadia, but there is two cultures you're playing with. And one of them are not fully, thank God, overtaken by the other. So we took this person up. My brother was the driver. He's a big burly guy, Donny. And we took this person, took him up to Tea Tree. and he had to face people. And people were allowed to hit him, but not with sticks or smash him or cut him with knives or anything. We controlled it, and we took him to Stirling, because that's where the lady came from that he killed. And then we took him back to Utopia, where he had done the deed, and then took him back to the main Alice Springs court for him to receive his sentence. And he did get life. He got 25 years. So that was that. And unfortunately, too, because people participate in substance abuse, this was grog-related, and it was done at bush. Now, with drugs, I don't know. But those were the days when we really got in and brought in the traditional law into the court and made it overt. You could see it. You could see the difference. I don't know what's happening now, but I think we need to practice that to show our brothers and sisters, the English ones, there is a difference, a vast difference. And sometimes it's diametrically opposed to each other. So let's keep an eye on that, rather than us following the white system and going along. I will never go there. I am who I am. And I have my own set of cultures, my philosophy and everything. I will not become another person's chattel, just for them to do as what they want to do with me. I am Arunda Ayawara woman, black one. So that was a good example of what you can do if you know what you're doing.
Yeah, I guess from my thank you. I guess with my experience, working within the legal system, I remember a time I had to assist, the criminal lawyer down at court, and it was a murder case, and the defendant the deceased was family for us, and assisting the defendant and the lawyer, family were kind of taking it out on me, and so therefore I had to, get my father to explain my role in handling, work as well as cultural obligations to my family. And so I guess, I've had to deal with that, as well, face to face. I guess, what can we do, Anipat, to assure that our language and law within the legal system is strong?
I think that what we have to do is what we're doing today is continue to practice the culture, practice the language. I grew up in an era in the 50s where language was not allowed to be spoken in the schoolyard. People who were heard to be speaking an Aboriginal language were actually caned, and when we went into class we had to speak the Queen's English in a proper manner. Pronounce all the words correctly, like how now, brown cow, and make sure you get the verbs and the sounds coming out of your mouth that were so correct. And yet in the playground, all the Aboriginal kids would come down to Aboriginal language that we all understood and laughed about. But there were teachers that were there walking around with their hands behind their backs, and they'd pick up on the language and they'd take you straight into the headmaster, and you would cop a caning. And so I witnessed that, and I thought, well, I don't want to get hurt, I don't want to get hit. And so I've got an ear for several languages, and I speak my Aranda tongue, that of a kindergarten kid. I converse with family downtown often. None of the families I know, or Aranda people that I know, speak to me in English. They always speak to me in language because they know that I can understand. And when I talk back to them, I talk back in words of one syllable. And yet, having a conversation when we're sitting down in our, what we call now our Granny's Mparntwe program, we speak language. So we're practicing our languages, and we go to the schools and we actually interpret to the little ones at school. And last week I had the invitation to go to one of the primary schools because they celebrated their NAIDOC week. And what the Aboriginal liaison officer did there, and who happens to be one of my sister-in-laws, she got a role play with the kids, just so that they know that when they walk around the streets of Alice, they actually hear a language, and they pick up, it might be Aranda, it might be Walpri, it might be Pidgin it might be Luricha, Namatjira. There's about 16 different languages that are spoken in Alice Springs because it's a service centre. And these little white kids and other people pick up on languages. So now they're trying to tell the kids to not just listen to it and think it's jabberish, listen to it and say, I can identify with that language. And it was really good to see that these kids up on the stage greeting one another, like, how are you? And when they said goodbye, they said, instead of saying, see you later, they said, Orijinaka, catch you later. And they were the really pleasing efforts from the liaison officer as well as the teachers that want to learn the language and want to make sure, because they did stress that this is the year of Indigenous languages.
And Auntie Rosalie, what can we do to assure to keep our language and law strong?
I'd say we stop chasing the white man's treasures, however wonderful it is. That is not a part of our culture. We walk lightly upon this earth in Australia, and we respect and love it. And be true to who you are. If you're lying to yourself, it will find you out, and it will expose you as the pretender that you are. So I will not compromise. Ang wana mayanga, ayangana aranda alyawara arala. Apmara china nambanda, ambanda ngijir macha chin maran angarapal. I am Aranda Namatjira woman, and I can speak English just as well and as fluently as I speak in English. And I do want to and have started proceedings to start a school out at Utopia, at a place called Mulgabor. White man's name, our name, Marakaya. At Akaya, I want my children to learn in language first. Our brothers and sisters in the Maori country do it. Why can't we do it in Australia? Are we so ashamed of our languages that we'd prefer to forget about that and just throw in little bits of language to say we're Aborigines? Come off it. Don't try and fool me with that. So we want to start that the kids learn in language, that they understand what learning is and what the white man's school of colonisation is, because that brainwashes you into thinking you're white. And you have to, as Pat just said, you have to speak English, and perfectly so, the Queen's language or the King's language. We're not allowed to speak in our languages because it's not respected. So before I die, which is probably tomorrow, I want this black school speaking in our language, comprehending our language, what learning and acquiring knowledge is. Not the education system that comes in and says, my God, you're black, I'm going to make you a carbon white copy. That is wrong. And it's time we all grew up and stopped the suppression of the trace of our people in this land. So that's where we need to go. White brothers and sisters and black brothers and sisters. We need to merge and be truthful about it and learn to appreciate everything about each other. But we're so lucky in Australia that one of the longest existing, continuing culture is alive and well in pockets in Australia. The Larrakia Nation, I would imagine, have got a lot of languages, not only within Darwin, but you got it off the islands too. Mr. Tujukura and I ran Bachelor College, and we were close, so close, on getting that to be a standalone university, concentrating on the black continuing presence in Australia. And I hope everyone who hears me today, please have that kind of mind, not where you've got to whitewash us. Thank you.
Please help me in thanking my panel today, Annie Rosalie, Kunoth-Monks and Annie Pat Miller. Thank you.
Now before, I think this is the last one. Yep. This will be the last session.
Hey, I can't run.
Still faster than me. There you go.
Oh, thank you.
Now also, what many people won't realise about Auntie Rosalie, or some of you will also have been around, the first ever coloured film in Australia, the movie Jeddah, she was our first Aboriginal movie star. So if you ever get to see the movie Jeddah, you'll see the posters up, you'll see the posters around, you'll see this amazing, beautiful young Aboriginal woman in that poster. That is this woman right here. So she's not only just an advocate for our people, technically speaking, she's our first black movie star. So,
Fleetingly.